Welcome to The Big Break Show, a podcast where we discuss short-term rentals, entrepreneurship, life, mindset, and everything in between. Here are your hosts, Rafa, Loza, and Jesse Vasquez.
What's up, everybody? We are back with episode number
51 of The Big Break Show.
Woo, 51 episodes already. We're close to a full 52-year cycle. I think we skipped 1 week, right? So
I was trying to do that where we say the same thing together, bro. We're like 51, The Big Break Show.
we should. Ready? Let's try it. 1,
Yeah.
2, 3. 51. You're way too slow, bro.
Damn it, dude. I'm not good at this, you guys. I'm not going to do this. We'll have to figure it out. But you know what's cool about today, Rafa?
What?
We had Ryan Kocherhans on our episode today. Who's Kocherhans. Ryan, I'm sorry I butchered that, dude. But Rafa backed me up. And this guy's got a super cool story, you guys, because he's got a lodge in Alaska, like literally that's dark halfway through the year. And this dude's making some serious freaking cash flow from a place that probably not many people would ever buy. And you guys are going to have to listen in because he talks about how he gets people there. It's a super remote, specific area. And he invests not only in Alaska, but in other parts of the U.S. But that specifically for me kind of hit home because he was able to find the super creative financing deal, connected with brokers, was diligent about calling different people, and landed a freaking super awesome seller financing deal. But yeah, Rafa, what do you think, man?
I'm excited. I've been wanting to bring it on for a while, so I'm glad he came on to talk about it because I'm gonna go to the lodge, right? And it's an all-inclusive package. It's super remote. You got to fly out there. You got to fly into Alaska. Then you got to take a little boat. 3 separate flights, because then you take a little private boat, and then a private plane, and then you take another little plane with those floater ones, right? That drops you off right in front of the river on the lodge, which is nuts. So it's a full experience. So I think he said 6 days of fishing and like bear sighting and all that fun stuff. So I'm planning on going next year for my birthday. So I wanted to bring him on, talk about the numbers, and man, is he crushing. He only operates for 12 weeks out of the year, and he is crushing with this thing. So I'm excited for him.
Yeah, definitely, man. He's making some serious scratch. Like, I actually thought he was going to say way less than what he did. I'm not going to tell you guys because you need to listen to the episode. He talks about it probably towards the middle. But he's making some serious coin in literally 12 freaking weeks, which I did not think he was expect that at all, actually.
Yeah, and it's crazy. It's such a cool, fun, and it's like his dream, which is the best part. It's like something he's always wanted to do, and now he has it. He's making bank off of it, and he gets to do this every single year. So it's like a vacation for him, So hopefully you guys enjoy the show. Without further ado, Mr. Ryan Kocherhans. Hey guys, Rafa here. A lot of you guys have been asking me if I have a course, if I teach, if I mentor my short-term rental business. And the answer is I do, actually. I just recently released my very first course. It has about 120 videos. If you're part of the monthly membership, we are adding 2 new videos a month in current issues or projects that I'm working on within the short-term rental business. And we do 1 monthly call live where you have access to me to ask me all the questions you want. So if you're interested in joining the course, or if you want any more info, click the link below. It is application only. We only open it to a certain amount of students every month because we want people who are serious, who really want to be a part of this, who actually want to take their short-term rental business and grow it, or are starting from scratch and want to learn how to actually acquire properties doing rental arbitrage. If that's you, if you're serious and you really want to do this, click the link below, schedule a call with me or my team, and we'll get you going. Now back to the show. Ryan, what's up, buddy? Thanks for coming on the show today. I'm really excited to have you on. I know we've got a lot of topics to go over, especially what you got going on up there in Alaska. But before we get into that, why don't you tell all the listeners who you are, what you do, what you're about, what your story is, and where you come from?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you guys for having me on. Much appreciated and excited to do it. So I'm Ryan Kocherhans. I'm based out of Utah, raised in Salt Lake City. I now live in southern Utah for part of the year, and part of the year I'm up in Alaska. So my journey has been, I started working for a property management company when I was pretty young, 19, 20 years old, really learned that business, kind of climbed the ranks there, which got me into multifamily investing. Long story short, I was with that company for almost 12 years and realized that I needed to go out on my own and be an entrepreneur, which led me to purchasing my lodge in Alaska. So I did that in 2019. It is very seasonal, but every summer I'm in Alaska from about, April, May through September, October. And then when I'm back home in Utah, I'm working on my real estate investing business.
So hold on. There's a lot to uncover here because the Alaska Lodge, your real estate business, all that fun stuff. So why don't you talk about a little bit about your backstory, like where you started, where you came from, how you got into real estate investing?
Yep. So I started leasing for a property management company. I quickly, I did that for about 6 to 8 months, became an assistant manager, did that for 6 to 8 months, became a manager. It was something that I kind of thrived at, that industry. So then pretty soon I found myself managing and being a regional manager. So I did that for several years, and that's where I got my background and introduction into real estate. A little unconventional, right? I never got into the single family or the wholesaling, although I've dabbled in it. But I learned all my skill set from there. And basically, my job as a regional manager was to make sure that these large multifamily properties were functioning and that the on-site teams were fulfilling their responsibilities. And then at that point, I'm double checking and creating the financials and making sure those get to the ownership or asset managers. And that was my life for a long time. I can actually pinpoint it to one specific day when I was sitting in my office working like 12 hours plus a day, writing these big checks to people, property owners. In fact, there was one particular guy, I was sending him checks every month for $50,000 to $100,000. And I knew that that was only a small portion of his portfolio. And I thought to myself right then, okay, if I stay here doing this forever, I'm never going to be where he is, right? And I started thinking right then, how can I change my lifestyle, my thinking, my habits to bridge that gap and be that guy? And, I was working a lot of hours. I was not seeing my kids, my family. So that's what really kind of sprouted the seed of, okay, I need to go out on my own, do my own thing, and put myself out there because it's scary. At least it was for me. And so I continued in that job for a couple years after that because I didn't know how to exit. But what I did during that time is I took advantage of some of those relationships I had and I started investing in multifamily properties as a limited partner. So, a limited partner means, right, I'm giving them my money. In this particular scenario, I actually wasn't even guaranteed a preferred return rate like a lot of people are structuring now, but I was given ownership equity in the deal. That kind of just that sparked and spurred me along because although especially my first deal was very small ownership and contribution, I'm like, oh wow, I just got $300 in the mail this month for doing nothing. It was very passive, right? And so again, that was as a limited partner owner or limited partner on this deal. So that kind of spurred me on. And as I progressed through that next couple years, I added two more deals. So three total deals as a limited partner to my portfolio and kind of just got that very passive income coming in. But I always have been a big outdoorsman and adventurous. So a dream of mine was to own, operate a fishing lodge in Alaska. So as I started looking for exit strategies, I felt like I maybe didn't have the money to start tackling big multifamily properties as a GP or a general partner. And so I did decide also because I'd been constrained to this job and office for so long, hey, I'm going to go do something that I love and I'm passionate about because I think I could be good at it. And I started looking like late at nights. Those 2 years I looked for lodge or business opportunities in Alaska. So to preface that, I'd been going to Alaska since I was about 14 and fell in love with it, right? Just love the mountains, the wildness of it, the remoteness. That's where I find my peace is in the outdoors. And so I looked and looked. I talked to brokers. I called sellers. After my job at night, I'd be calling these people, emailing them, trying to connect. And in the end, I finally found a guy. I started studying creative finance. And in the end, I found a guy that was had some pain. He needed to sell his business because he was hunting and that was his bread and butter. He tried to start a fishing lodge and he was struggling with it and accommodating his fishing guests. And I was able to negotiate a seller finance, so a creative finance deal with him, where I did have to bring some money down to the table. He wanted some skin in the game, and he financed the rest of it. So I didn't have to go through a bank or traditional financing. We do go through a servicing company to keep it official. So I send them the money, and he does make an interest rate on me, right? So at the time, he wanted 5% interest, which I gave him. At the time, it was a little steep, and now I'm grateful for it, right? Because I couldn't get that now. So that launched my exit of my property management job. Because even though the lodge is seasonal, as a regional manager, they needed me there full time, 40 hours a week. Well, it was like 60 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, and so I ended up quitting my W-2, dedicating myself fully to the lodge for that spring and summer in 2019. And then that winter is when I came home and really kind of dug my heels into building my real estate investing business.
Ryan, dude, that was a lot of stuff to unpack here real quick. I want to take this back to the property management side real quick, because I don't think a lot of people understand, like, that side of the business can be extremely ugly. And maybe you can break that down for a second, because I know that a lot of people talk about property management. In the short-term side, it's one thing. On the leasing side, long-term, it's another. Like, you deal with like literal slumlords, and I'm assuming that you probably did. What did you like about property management? What did you not like?
I think the thing I like the most is that and I'm not saying I'm great at everything, right? But when it comes to property management and understanding how a multifamily property runs, you really have to be well rounded, especially if you're overseeing. And it's one thing if you're just leasing or you're an assistant manager, but when you're overseeing a team of 3 to 6 people on each property, and you have 14, 15 properties spanning 3 states, you have to be well rounded. And I think the thing I liked about it most was being able to interact with all the different people involved in that, and also kind of trying to hone my skill sets into where people needed help and helping them fulfill that. And man, I will credit all my knowledge of real estate and multifamily to that company that I worked for. I had some great bosses, some great mentors that just taught me a lot about the financials and the operations of multifamily properties. So that's probably what I liked the most. And if you wanted to go to the opposite scale of that, I guess what I liked the least is that it's labor intensive. Like you said, there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
It's not like just property management. It's like leasing, lease renewals, your rent collection.
50 different parts to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you have to like keep tabs on all this. And it was just, I learned so much from that company. And I hated though that I was always working, right? And now there's some good services, and probably then too, that I just didn't realize. But I was like getting middle of the night calls. Hey, there's a fire at Canyon Point. Like, oh shit, I better show up and help these people. Like, we have 12 apartments that have to get displaced. And so, yeah, there's a lot to it. But I also am a people person. And another aspect I really liked about it is just being able to interact with people and genuinely help them. If you're a manager, a regional manager, I think you would relate. Sometimes your tenants come into you and it's not just about their rent or whatever. It's about their life and their problems.
Right. It's personal.
I mean, I went to the extent of like breaking down financial plans for people or relationship plans. And again, I'm no expert on that, but I did like that it exposed me to a huge field of opportunity, learning, and growth.
Yeah. What were you guys using for software? Like Appfolio, or probably back then it was something different?
Yeah. So towards the end of my career with them, we were using Appfolio and we preferred it. I also used RealPage, one site, quite a bit. and we also used Yardi products.
Yardi,
Yep, those would probably be the three most, I guess, the three that I had experience in. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, cool. Yeah, and the reason why I brought that up is because like I've been thinking about businesses to acquire, and I always thought like people in property. If you guys go on anybody right now, like if you're listening or watching this, go on Google and just type in property management and look at how many shitty companies there are that are property management that have 1-star reviews. There's literally like hundreds of them. So I looked at it and I'm like, how can I acquire a business? Because there's a lot of money in that business if you do it the right way.
Right.
Especially if you do it in a sense that has you acquire a shitty company and you turn it into something that's profitable. Not only that, but you're able to like add more things in, like STR management, midterm rental management, and you turn these properties from what they were before to something really great. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in that. I've actually been kicking the tire around, like, should I pick up a property? But you have to be attached to a brokerage in order to have a true property management company. So yeah, man, I'm always curious to talk to people that have been in this space for a long time and kind of shed light on the good and the bad and the ugly when it comes to that. So go ahead, Rafa.
Now, yeah, there's also a ton of regulation in that space too, Jesse. So there's something to keep in mind as well. Yeah, for property management company, there's a ton of regulation here in California, at least.
Yeah.
But anyway, Ryan, I want to touch a little bit on how you ended up, because a lot of people are probably thinking of like they're wondering at this point, what's this Alaskan Lodge that we've been bringing up, right? And I really want to touch on that a little bit more in detail, aside from your multifamily. But before we get to it, my question: when you're doing these true passive investments, are you still in them, or do they stop at some point? And then how did it look from you to transition to actually being the one doing the deals yourself?
Yeah, great question. So I am still in a couple of my limited partnership deals. One of the main ones that I was in and invested a lot of money in, they actually decided to sell. So that's a great point in that you bring up in the question is being a limited partner, you don't really have say, you're not operating the property, you don't have say in what's going on with the property. And if they want to sell, then they sell. And, it was beneficial to me. I was fine with that. It's not like I was sore about their decision, and I totally trust them, the people that I partnered with. But that's a big key. If you are going to be a limited partner with someone, just make sure that they have a track record of operating and are experienced, and you trust them to make good decisions for this property. And then transitioning to a GP is a huge step because, right, when you go start and try getting to be approved for your own loans and your own financing, do those limited partnership equities still help you and build your balance sheet? Yes, but those general partnership positions will help you like greatly. And, I'm still not to the point where I'm able to go tackle a 150 unit property and get financing in my name and do everything myself. That's where I'm going to rely on partners and sponsors that have a big net worth. But one thing to remember is if you're trying to bridge that gap between limited partner and general partner, a lot of people have this misconception that the general partner always has the most ownership in the property. That's not always true, right? Sometimes a general partner, especially starting out, you're going to have to give away a lot of your equity to your investors, to the person who's raising your money, to the people bringing your money, to make that deal work. But at the end of the day, the difference between that is the general partner is generally the operating partner where you're going to be responsible for the asset management, the project management. If you're doing rehabs, you can't really go blame it on the contractors because at the end of the day, all your limited partnerships are coming to you, holding you accountable for those actions and decisions and performance of the property.
That's a great way. That's a great way to put it into perspective because a lot of people don't really understand what that means.
What do you think? Would you ever own a property management company?
Yeah, I would, man. And I've thought a lot about it. And you know what? I think I'm going to, like, these last couple weeks, I've had so many people reaching out to me of like needing help with it that I'm like, I think I'm going to open like some kind of consulting business, right? To help other people. Because there's a lot of people trying to, like, they might get a 30 or 40 unit property and they're trying to manage it themselves. Or even if you have a property management company in place and your property's not performing well, they could use some help. But the only thing I would say about starting one is that you got to pick like what market. Like if you have a property to manage yourself and start that way, it's the best, right?
I would acquire one.
Yeah. There's so many laws that change state by state. So I would say start in an area and grow in that area and then expand. Like get a solid base in one market and then expand.
Dude, I feel like if I opened a property management company, I'd crush it because first off, like I know how to build a good culture in a company. Second off, most of these people are like, they're bringing on landlords that are super shitty. And the landlords, if you go on reviews and look online, most of the people are like, our water was shut off or we had a leak and nobody came out to do it. There was a service order put out. Nobody came out. So it's a lot of service vendor issues that the companies just weren't following up. And that goes back to the owners. Like the owners are the ones like, oh yeah, we'll send somebody out. It's a leak. We've had that for 10 years. And you've probably seen that before. And it's just like, dude, like, I feel like that's an easy way to, you could pick and acquire a property management company and fix it internally and then get rid of the landlords that are shitty and just bring in good quality landlords that have positive feedback that are going to leave that online. You know what I mean?
I agree, man, because there's so many like mismanaged property management companies. That sounds funny.
It's crazy.
But it's true. Yeah. They're a management company and they're mismanaged. And you know what? A lot of them are old school. Like they don't know how to build culture and people hate working there and they dread, you know, and like that was my path for a while until my company changed some ownership hands and culture started changing.
Right.
But yeah, that would be my only advice. Like pick one market where because the biggest thing where a property management could get in big trouble is by violating landlord tenant laws.
Right.
So if you can pick your market and be confident that you know the laws in that market, build it from there. And then, like I said, they vary state to state. So from that point, just keep building and grow from there. But yeah, it's nice because management, right? You get a management fee and all the payroll is expensed through the property as well as your management fee. And typically you're taking a management fee like like 75 units or above, they're going to be taking even lower, right? Like if it's a small property, 10% is very standard. If it's 75 units or above, you're probably only looking at a 2.5% to 4% management fee. But again, that percentage is based off your monthly gross income. You take a monthly fee from it, and that's your rental income plus your ancillary or other income. And so, do you have maybe the back end of accounting and whatever else is going on that's not payroll expense through the property? But yeah, your manager, your leasing, your maintenance, whoever's on site, it's all expense through the property in addition to your management fee. So if you can start getting properties lined up, bing, 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 you can make a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know who had a really successful property management company, Jesse?
Who?
Steve Rosenberg. He sold it for a couple $100 million to some VC firms.
No way. Yeah, I think it goes back to like culture and stuff. And like I was saying earlier, Rafa, because we're in this business, we make, Rafa makes 50, 60, 70, 100 grand a month on some of his properties. Sorry to call you out on your cash flow. But dude can go buy a business today for 30 grand and he's going to make that 30 grand like literally in 6 months a month from just getting a property management company together. So it's like, dude, I don't know, man. I just feel like, and then you can sell it later on. It's not like you can't sell it. I mean, maybe you can sell an arbitrage package, but you never know. Like I just look at it that way. The ROI on that.
I think you're just watching too much Alex and Layla on Instagram right now.
I'm not, dude. I'm just thinking about.
No, but you're right. I get what you're saying. It's 100%. Biggest wealth owners in this country are business owners, and they buy small businesses, repackage them, and sell them at some point or another.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, not anybody can buy a business, and not everybody has that like culture of like knowing how to turn a business around and working with those types of people and understanding the back end. like you do, dude. That's like, I'm sitting here thinking about like Rafa and Jesse property management, dude. There we go. We're going to have a big old empire, Rafa. Sell it to the VC funds for 500 mil. I mean, it's just, dude, I can't tell you guys how many times a day, Ryan, that I get messages from people that are just like, hey, can you property manage this? Can you property manage this? And I don't want to take them because they're not like the properties that I would want to have into my portfolio, but I just give them to my students and stuff. So if we just took every single one of those and made 15, 20, 25% on those, dude, that's like, I mean, I'm talking about everywhere, but if we just like really localized it and acquired a crappy company that's not working well and then turned it around and made it something better and hired the right people, I don't know Appfolio or anything. I've been looking at it for a while. I'm actually thinking about using that for my property management stuff now, because you can send vendor lists. Everything's in one spot. I don't have to my team doesn't have to go everywhere.
All your tenant files are online. They can apply, pay. Like, you can literally have someone move in and all they have to do is get the keys, or maybe this day and age you give them a keypad and they're in.
Yep.
Yeah. Appfolio is very cool and automated online systems. It's definitely a good software.
For sure.
Ryan, I want to talk about now the actual Alaskan Lodge. Like, I want you to go into details on how you found this place. Actually, first, tell us what it is. Like, what's the true story behind the Alaskan Lodge? Like, what is it?
Yeah, man. So it's what it is. It's my dream built on blood, sweat, and tears. So I found this lodge right earlier. I was saying, I was like, at night, in the evenings, I'm dedicated. I'm like, okay, I have to find a way to escape my W-2 and have consistent income for my family. I have a wife and 3 kids, so it's not like I can just, like, I have other people depending on me. So I finally found this broker that I really kind of built a relationship with. He sends me a few deals. He calls me up one night. He's like, hey, I have this client. He thought he had his lodge sold to a friend. They put it under contract. They had 30 days of due diligence. On day 29, they backed out. They didn't want to live out here. And this guy really wants to sell because he has his hunting season booked for next year, and there's no way he can be here to run his fishing lodge. So if you're serious about this, then you better come up and check it out. So I did. I was like, okay, I got off work, told them, I'm doing the property management thing. I go up, I check out the lodge. I checked out a couple lodges while I was there, but this particular one I just fell in love with. I grew up in Utah, fly fishing on rivers. This is a very remote lodge. It's on a trophy salmon river, so it's all freshwater, typically fly fishing. We'll spin fish too, but we're catching like rainbow trout, dolly varden, Arctic grayling, northern pike, and then all 5 salmon species. So I fell in love with it. It's way off grid, right? So you have to fly to Anchorage. You take another hour flight from there over the Western Alaska range to a village called Iliamna on like a 10-passenger plane. And then from there, we load you on float planes. So 4 people per plane plus gear, and you float plane out to the lodge and they'll land on the river right in front of the lodge. So that's half the experience right there.
That sounds so badass, because I'm looking forward to going out there.
Yeah.
Rafa, I've been on one of those planes before, dude, and you can see the pilot's head in the back, and they were like, "Oh, we're mismatched on weight. You need to move up here," because I was like one of the bigger guys on there.
Yeah.
So I had to move from the freaking back of the plane to like the front, and they were like trying to balance it. I was fucking terrified, dude.
Yeah. It's a real thing, man. Logistics, like, I have to collect everyone's weight ahead of time, and I'm also planning on, right, like all my fuel, all my food, everything is flown in, because where we're located, there's a native Alaskan village about 4 hours downriver, but I don't even think they have a store. Maybe they do. I don't know. It's very small. I have to fly everything in. It's a big logistics game. We run 8 people per week, so we have 8 guests. We'll run a 6-day trip, so people float plane in. We offload them, we feed them their lunch, we get them out fishing that day. They stay for their 6 days. We give them all 3 meals a day, and then I have 4 guides that work for me. And so essentially, it is a fishing lodge. So we wake up.
That's super cool.
unlike a lot of fishing places, or especially in Alaska, where I have a friend that guides on the Kenai, and he'll be getting his guests out at like 4 or 5 a.m. just to go get a spot. We have no one around us. We're the
Yeah.
only lodge on the river. So we'll wake up, have breakfast at 8. We fish at 9. You're gone all day. You come back at 5 or 6. We feed them 3 meals a day. We stay there. It's very cool because you're disconnected. Well, this year I'll probably have Starlink, which will be a huge benefit for me running the business. But most of the guests that come out, they love it because they disconnect from that internet. There's
Right.
no cell service, of course, and so you're just kind of removed and I'll say like forced to spend time with each other and like develop these relationships and friends. So that's what I love about it is people that come up, they leave and we have like a deeper level relationship than most people I interact with at home, just because we've had all that time together. But yeah, that's what we do. We fish. We do bear viewing as well. So that's one of our most popular things. We'll fly people to Katmai National Park, about an hour float plane ride. You get out and you can go to Brooks Falls or Moraine Creek and see these wild Alaskan brown bears live in action and fish by them. And, people always ask me, can I do other stuff out there? It's so rugged that even hiking is hard. You're hiking across this tundra and muskeg. There's no trails, there's no roads. It's just like literally the Alaskan bush. So that is what attracted me to it and what I love about it. And that's a pretty good summary of what we do out there.
So how do you set all this up? Like, how far in advance do people have to? Because I'm still planning on going out there for my birthday next year. Like, we're gonna talk about that later. But
Okay.
how far in advance do people have to book? How does it look? Like, what's the process for you?
Yeah, so right now is heavy booking season for me. So it's November 22nd. From October to December, I'm like heavily marketing, trying to book for my next year. People will probably continue booking depending on their space up and through like March or April. After that point, it's booking for the next year, and it depends on the person too, right? Like I have a group that's already actually booking for 2024, just because they plan that far ahead. Definitely not necessary to plan like 2 years ahead. But I always tell people, hey, if you want like one of the best weeks, by like December, January, those weeks are typically getting filled up. Yeah.
I got a question for you on this. Like, how do you market, dude? Like, how does somebody find, like, it seems, and this is something that I think is so cool. And I've been talking about this for a long time. Anything that has an experience attached to it, like, people are going to seek it out. It could be the thing that you think is the dumbest thing on the planet Earth, but somebody will want to do that. And I don't think fishing is dumb, right? It's one of the biggest sports on the planet Earth, especially being out in the middle of nowhere where it's like untouched. So how do you guys market this, man? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So historically, lodges have done trade shows, outdoor trade shows, and I have done several of those myself. So I'll go do the fly fishing. There's a show called the Fly Fishing Show. It's like an expo or a convention, right? And I'm just hitting cities that are popular for those kind of activities. So they happen to do one in Edison, New Jersey. Not that it's known for fly fishing, but because it's one of the bigger and only shows back there, it draws a lot of East Coast crowd. I also do their show in like Denver, Pleasanton, California, and they do some others. I'll do outdoor shows in Salt Lake, Boise, Phoenix. But for me, I started realizing, okay, this taking a lot of time, expense. Like when I'm at a show for 3 or 4 days, that's all I'm doing, and everything else is kind of stopped. So I started really quickly leaning into online marketing. So social media has been really big for me. I've partnered up with specifically Santeo has been so good for me, man. He's this fly tire guy and fly fisher guy that has a very niche following and audience on Instagram. And I just started messaging people on Instagram. hey, what's up? I'm Ryan. I have this launch. Here's what it is. And now I've worked out a deal with him where he pays for his travel. I give him a comped trip. He comes up and take pictures for me. And every year he comes, he brings people. So that's one
badass.
marketing method. Yeah, finding people in the industry, and they do these hosted trips. And it's like, hey, if you bring me 6 or 7 people, you're the 7th or 8th guy, I'll give you a free trip, and they all pay and they love it. I get good media. So that's been really good for me. I've also experimented with like some pay-per-click Google ads, pay-per-click. And other than the social media influencers, the biggest thing for me has just been running some Facebook ads. And like this year, I had a professional photographer came up, and we made a really cool video that I just started putting out there actually. And so I've started really leaning into that because I have a friend and mentor in this business that he's always told me, you got to go to the shows, because if someone's going to spend this kind of money and come spend a week with you, they want to talk to you face to face. So I just figured, okay, how I'm going to overcome that is I'm going to get my face on social media. I'm going to make videos of me talking, hey, I'm Ryan, here I am, here's a lot. I'm going to get my guides talking, their faces on, so that if we do go to shows, hopefully people recognize us. And if they don't go to shows, hopefully by just trying to be personable and present ourselves through that social media and marketing, but that's how we're connecting with people that are kind of like, man, that's where I want to go. And that's been pretty effective. So more and more, I'm leaning more and putting more and more resources into the online as opposed to going to the physical shows.
Is the trip mainly composed of just fishing for all 6 days, or how do you structure that? Like, do you fish like from 7 to 7?
Yeah, so I always tell people we'll structure it however you want. The typical trip is going to be geared towards fishing. So, we'll get out on the water by 9. You'll go out and fish. Sometimes you come back for lunch. Sometimes you go have a shore lunch. I have guests and even a guide included that says, "Oh, I don't like eat fish," but when you go out and catch a fresh sockeye or a silver salmon and you can cook it an hour later, I've yet to find anyone that said they didn't like it.
Sounds good.
Right? So that's part of the experience. And then I've had groups or commonly I'll have couples come up where maybe, and it's either sometimes I have a couple where the female is like, let's fish all day, or the male is like, let's fish all day. And I just tell them, hey, because we only have 8 people and 4 boats on the water, we're going to customize this to what you want. If you want to come back, then just tell your guide and he'll bring you back. Like, we have rainy days where people come back, and at that point we're just playing games, having drinks, like making extra food, talking, conversing. We have days where people just want to come back and don't want to fish, not necessarily because of the weather, but just because they're tired of fishing. Hiking's always an option, but again, I have limited trails. So I do have a little hiking trail you can go on. I have a path out to my gravel airstrip that we have on the property, and that field is like full of blueberries. So when my kids are there, they're picking blueberries like 3 hours a day at least. They love it. And then the other big thing that we'll do is that bear viewing. That can include fishing or not. I'll have groups that just go more for experiencing the bears, taking pictures. And then I have groups that go and want to see the bears, but they want to fish as well. And then, probably the only other thing that we do is we will go try to do some animal viewing and just sightseeing. But even that includes you getting in the boat and going up the river. But that could be, a 2-3 hour ride up the river and then back. So.
You guys ever do any ice plunging out there?
You know what? I felt like it because the water is so cold. By the time I get there, the ice is gone from the river. And then by the time I leave, it's still not forming. But when you fly there, you fly over this mountain range full of glaciers and glacier lakes and waterfalls. So it's beautiful, but yeah, the water itself is very cold. So, I've had days that are hot that I've swam with my kids. And then I've had days that we dropped a expensive rod and reel in the water. We're like, okay, someone's going in, and it feels like an ice plunge.
That's cool.
Yeah, and hey, Raj, touch base on you're there half the year because there's probably nighttime there. Because for those of you who don't know, Alaska, a lot of the area out there will actually it'll experience like varying hours of darkness through the year, or long hours of daytime or long hours of nighttime. So can you kind of break that down and why you leave for half the year?
Yeah. So you're exactly right. So summertime is going to be full light. So when we have the longest day of the year on June, I forget the exact date. I think it's toward mid or end of June. It's very light. Like the sun, you will literally see the sun come up over here at probably 3-4 a.m. and it moves around. It doesn't just move across, it moves around. And then by like midnight, 1, it starts coming back and approaching the horizon. And then maybe by 2 o'clock, it's dark for an hour or two. Right? Like you don't even see stars hardly. It's too light and it's just light all the time. Like we'll be out like by the fire or doing whatever, like s'mores or just talking, and it's like, oh wow, it's 12:30. I guess we should go to bed. You think it's like 7.
That's
7 o'clock.
crazy.
I was gonna say I'd rather have that than the night, the darkness. Like that's what would screw me up, man.
Well, and that's the adverse, right? Then you get into winter. So by the time I leave in the fall, it's usually getting dark by about 9, 10 o'clock, and not getting light again until maybe 7 or 8. And then that just continues on the path and just totally switches roles. Where in the middle of the winter, you're lucky to have a few hours of daylight, right? And that's going to be accentuated by how north in the state you are, because Alaska is a huge state. The further north you go, the more darkness, well, the more light cycle extremes you're going to have.
Right.
That's when you actually start seeing the northern lights and stuff is during the fall and winter time. So, but it's dark a lot, and that's why I leave. It's cold, it's bitter cold, like freezing or below all the time, and it's dark. And so I kind of just thrive on those summertime light cycles and temperatures.
So can I break into this real quick, Rafa? I want to talk about like the numbers of things because, to run a business for how long are you there? 5 months out of the year?
Yeah. And my season is actually, I've got like 12 weeks of my season.
Okay. So does that 12 weeks supply you for the entire year? And then I want to go into the sub 2 or however you did that creative financing. So let's break into like what that cycle looks like, as far as like revenue. And I don't know if you're open to sharing that kind of stuff, but what that actually looks like. And then, because, most of us are in the short-term or midterm space where we get revenue all year long, unless you're in a seasonal area that only gives you, whatever during a certain time. And I'm always curious about that, like what your reserves look like, what the cash flow looks like, what you do during the off season, how you kind of talked about what you do to prepare for the following years. And then I want to talk about the creative financing. I know that we don't have a whole lot of time to talk about that, but let's break into that real quick.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so when I started, I definitely went into this with some savings, just because I bought a broken business.
Right.
But once you get an established lodge business, it can be very profitable, even for those few short months, right? So just to give you guys some numbers, like just some real basic numbers, and it's all based upon my occupancy and booking, okay?
Right.
So to answer your question, also, before I break down the numbers, have I relied on it solely thus far? No. And actually starting out, I would be lying if I said I even could, right? That's why I also do some real estate investing. But now I'm building it to the point where it could be that kind of business. So I charge $5,500 per person per week, which includes their float plane in. and I run 8 guests a week. So that's about $44,000 of revenue per
Per
week.
week. Mm-hmm.
And I'll run, 12 weeks per year. So that's $528,000 of revenue. Granted, where I'm at, I do have a lot of expenses.
Right. Just those planes and the fuel alone.
Yeah. The planes are my bit. Like I'm spending over $100K on just float plane charters a year just to get people in and out. Yeah. Not to mention my fuel. By the time I calculate the flights in, I'm paying like $12 a gallon this year.
Right.
I'll burn through easy 120 gallons a week. Right, we're burning through fuel quick. But I calculate that I have about a 60% expense ratio if I'm running things properly on that. So if I were booked full, I would, be just above that 300K mark for the summer.
For 12 weeks. Dude, that sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I'm on year 4. Like I haven't had a year yet, to be transparent, where I've been like, oh, I have 8 people on every week, because
Right.
I get different groups, right? I might get a group that has 8 people. I've run groups of 10 or 12 if they're the same group, or I might get a group of 2 and another group of 2 and then a group of 3. And I'm like, okay, do I run this at 6 or 7? So I will run some weeks at 6 or 7 guests a week. But yeah, the income's there. It's just all based upon my marketing and ability to fill those spots.
How much do you how much do you spend on average for advertising?
Yeah, I'd say so. That's why I like the online too, is because I'm spending less than I do at the shows, actually. So I figured I can spend, it might take me, $500 to $700 to book a trip or a group. And then that's kind of where the variable comes in, is if I run that on Facebook, I might get one single person, which is less ideal, or I might get one guy that's like, hey, I have 7 people that want to come with me. And if I can score a booking on $500 to $800 and get 8 people, I mean, that's magic for me, right? Typically, it doesn't work out that way. Typically, I would spend $500 to $800 to book 2 to 3 groups to fill 1 week. And if I go to shows, that's why I'm trying to phase that out, is, then I have airfare, shipping costs, my whole trade show display. Am I paying a staff member to come with me? Hotels, rental car, food, whatever. And so that's why I've kind of leaned into just like, let's roll with this online stuff if that's what's working. So
Yeah, I feel like a lot of more people are online anyway. It doesn't seem like it doesn't seem as cost saving as I thought it would be, especially if you're getting good bookings in the amount of money that you're spending in comparison. I mean, so that's pretty good. I want to ask about, aside from the numbers, because how does it look in terms of like security, insurance, all that fun stuff? Like how does that look on that side? Because I would imagine you'd have to have some kind of crazy policy, right, for these planes and like people out there all remote and everything.
yeah. So one reason that I don't own a float plane, and to be transparent, I don't really have the means right now. I mean, each one of those planes is costing $500,000, and if I want to try to move my guests, I need at least 2 planes. Not to mention pilots to run them, and so that is definitely one of the goals. Hopefully, I can work towards that. But one nice thing about hiring the charter company is that their insurance is covering that transportation, right? I also have people sign a waiver that releases me from, they're acknowledging that they're coming to remote Alaska, a dangerous place, and that releases me from liability. Now, I know personally from a friend that doesn't always work, right? Like if someone gets hurt at your place or this kind of thing, like you could very well still be liable.
Have you had a medical emergency there, Ryan?
You know what? I've never had a major one. The biggest things we've had are like some hooks.
Yeah.
Like I had a guy that got a hook in his eyelid.
Oh,
I thought it was in his
Wow.
eyeball, but we pull out. I've had some pretty bad hooks in the head, hands, this kind of thing. But luckily, we haven't had a medical emergency, and I highly recommend everyone that comes to buy a service that's available where if you do have an emergency, they'll come pick you up. It's like an insurance, so to speak, a trip insurance for that. And then, yeah, it was unfortunate because my first year, I had a great insurance policy where I was paying maybe like $6,000 a year. And right when I bought it, and when I came back that spring, I flew in and half of my roof was blown off, right? Because I winterized this place for the winter. No one's there, it's boarded up, water lines drained. And so that was a huge obstacle to overcome because I was a little short on cash at the time, my first year starting. My insurance drops me. They're like, we have no idea what this place was like. We've never had a claim here. But now that we see, we don't even want to insure you. So then I'm trying to get insurance for a first year operator with a claim on my first year already because I did an insurance claim to fix the roof. And that was a big obstacle. I thought, like, I even had the guy that seller financed me calling me like, hey, your insurance is expired. It's been for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
If you don't get insurance, I'm going to call the note. Like, you and I both know this place can't go through a winter without insurance. So that was like a squeeze point for me where I'm just like, what am I doing? How can I recover? And luckily, my insurance lady was really good. She found an insurance company that was like triple what I was paying, right? So now I'm paying like 18 grand instead of my six. But they let me split it into payments, and I just like worked through it that way. And then, yeah, I have to insure my guides for liability and also my workers' comp. So it's definitely been a challenge, but I've been lucky to kind of have the right, I guess it's back to who, not how. Like, if I wouldn't have been for that insurance lady that found that company that was willing to work for me, who knows what I would have done, but that's how it worked out. So,
yeah. You know what? That leads me into, because you just talked about the note and stuff like that. How did you get that deal? Like, let's break down that deal. Because I know there's a lot of people that are in this space right now, and they're trying to work creative deals, and it's such a thing now, especially with the market, the way it's kind of turning. I feel like there's a tremendous opportunity for people that are looking for these kinds of deals. So break that down, like in a very simple, like you're explaining this to a fifth grader like myself, what that would actually look like, what that looks like, and what that entails.
yeah. So, I think the biggest factor here was that this guy did have some pain. Like, he needed to sell because he was hunting and he thought he had it sold. It was under contract, almost through due diligence, and he had booked out his whole next year of hunting. So when that seller backed out, he was just kind of like, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I can't run this next year. It's costing me money. I need to hunt. So that's where my relationship with the broker for 2 solid years of just bugging this guy, where he thought, okay, Ryan keeps bugging me. I'm going to call him and see if he's serious about this, right? And then I had to take some big action steps then of like, I'm working for my job. I had huge fears of quitting, go up there, see the place. And that was huge because once I met this guy in person and we talked and I worked alongside him and helped him close up the lodge for the season, we did build up like that rapport was key and just trust between us. And that he trusted that I could take his business. So, I don't know if you always have to meet in person, but that's how it worked out for me and how I was able to kind of build that rapport and relationship. And he needed some cash. He wanted more. He wanted like a 25% down payment if he was going to owner finance. If he's going to owner finance, 65% of the property or, any high amount, he definitely or 75%, sorry. He definitely wanted some security and to know that I had skin in the game. So I ended up buying this lodge for 600,000, which is actually a cheap price for a lodge. But keep in mind, I basically bought the facility and equipment because his business wasn't great. He was a hunter, not a fisherman. and he was struggling to run the business and keep it afloat. I came in with a little less than 100,000. So I came in at about 15% down is what I talked to him. I just kind of asked him like, hey, I don't have a ton of cash, but I do have some cash. Like, what do you need to make this deal work? What do you need for your next season so that we can make this a win-win? And that was it. He needed that 15% down to invest in his next season of hunting. So I was able to get in with a fairly low down payment, much less than if I had gone to a conventional. Well, and not to mention, like, let's be honest, a conventional lender won't even loan on this business unless I have the collateral. It's way too risky. Way too risky. So if I don't have the collateral, which I didn't, they're not loaning me the money. So I was fortunate and to just kind of negotiate with him. He wanted a little bit higher interest rate, he wanted like a 6%. And I was able to talk him down to a 5%. So at the time it wasn't ideal because interest rates were so low.
Yeah.
But now based on the economy and where interest rates are, I'm sitting pretty, man. I'm very happy with it.
Hang on, because before we get to, so explain what you're actually saying here. So he wanted 15% of the money down. So you just came. We're just going to give this hypothetical. You came in with $100,000. He probably wanted more than that.
Yeah, I was like, yeah.
He wanted 90. Okay, so he wanted 90, and then how do you discuss the percentage? Like how does that go about? Does it go back on his payment? You're talking about giving him 5% on top of what that payment is every month. He's not getting any of the revenue that's coming through. It's just, you're just taking over essentially what that payment of that property is for him.
He's paying the bank, Jesse.
I know, but I'm trying to explain this so that people can understand, like on a simple way.
Yep, exactly. So he did not retain any ownership or equity in the lodge or the business. At that time, I actually became the owner of this property. And that was all gone through with a title company, where now I'm the owner of this property. We did go through, like I mentioned, a servicing company, right? To keep it official. So it's not like I just send him personally the check. I actually send to Professional Escrow Services Incorporated in Kenai, Alaska. They kind of manage when I send in a payment, they send me a statement. But yeah, basically what we agreed upon was he wanted to make, for being the financer or becoming the bank, Rafa, like you said, he wanted to make some money off that. He's like, okay, well, if I'm taking the risk to loan you this money, basically, not like he loaned me money, but he loaned me this asset or the value of this asset. And so I agreed to pay him a 5% interest on that money. So when I make my payment, I make payments twice a year. When I make that payment, a large portion of that payment is going towards his interest. So he's interested in doing this deal because he knows a bank is not going to loan someone money for this. So he either has to find someone that has a big chunk of cash, or he's going to capitalize and make some money off someone like me that needs that owner financing. So I make 2 payments a year. He gets 5% interest. So a large portion of my payment goes towards his interest that he just pockets. And then a very important thing for him was, although we had a good rapport and relationship, he didn't want to be stuck in this deal for 10, 15, 20 years. So we set a 5-year balloon. And what that 5-year balloon means is in 5 years, he wants to get paid off. And now we do have a contingency in there that, depending on the performance and finances of the lodge, and as long as I've made my on-time payments, we do have an option to extend that. And that was just kind of like a custom wording and paragraph that we put into that contract. Just in case, that if I need an extra year or two to pay off that last big chunk of money, that it doesn't come to me running a great business for 4.5 years and then he takes the lodge back because I can't make the balloon payment. So he wanted some security of that. If it was running bad, he had some recourse. But if it was running well, he's willing to work with me for an extra year or two, which I will probably try to utilize just so I don't have such a big payment due in year 5.
So how did you guys work out that payment then for that 5-year balloon? How aside from the 5 interest, what's the payments like?
Yeah, so, and man, I should have brought one of my receipts that I could have told you like exact numbers, but I basically pay like 30 grand twice a year. So I'll pay him $60,000 a year to take down that balance of, that's the principal balance, right? But he is making his 5%, and that's 5% annually. So to clarify, that's not like 5% on the total amount, right? He gets a 5% annual interest. So he will make he will make a nice little chunk of money just on his interest from me. But I was willing to kind of give him that based upon him being willing and able to finance me. So
So basically, you're doing about 5K a month for the principal. So over 5 years, you've paid off what, 300 grand?
yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then so he's going to call it, you'd owe 200 grand aside from what you've paid in interest already. Now, let's say you can't get up. I mean, what's your plan? I'm actually curious as to how you're going to handle this now, because what's the plan after the balloon expires, or he calls you on the note and says, hey, 200 grand up front right now. Have you been saving for that over the last 4 years? Or is it something that you're going to rely on someone else to finance you now that you have experience in managing this lodge and you have a track record of solid, good income? How does that look?
Yeah, great question. And there's a couple different options I've thought of. So, yes, to answer your first question, yes, I have been putting away a little bit for that. And especially now that like this year is looking like I'll be pretty fully booked, I'll have more extra cash to put away for that than I have in prior years. So, I'm leaning heavy on this year and next year to be able to build those cash reserves. Um, there is also the option. I've been talking to a couple of my friends up there that either are pilots or have planes where it would be, and even one of my customers, actually, one of my clients, that, they have some extra cash, they want to invest in a business. And so I could probably bring them in and pay that balloon and also expand my lodge a little. So maybe I run 10 to 12 people a week as opposed to 8.
Doing
I
like a share split, you mean? They're like, let's say you can bring in 10 people at 100 grand each. They get a percentage of the cash flow, something like a small, like, is that what you're
Yeah,
referring
well,
to? Or
or even more, I would just do like an initial capital raise for them to pay off the lot, give them an equity percentage ownership or of the cash flow, whatever works there. And then the third option, which I'm leaning heavily on, as much as I would like to expand, I do kind of like having it be my business, right? So my third option is. Um, I've kept in touch and have a good relationship with this guy. So I know that he's happy in seeing my success in running the business. And so I'm hoping to kind of lean on our contingency or agreement that if the business is running well and I do need an extra year or two, I think we limited it 2 extra years. So I'd be maxed at 7. But I'm hoping that I could extend that balloon to the 7th year, and that in which case, I should know those numbers off the top of my head. But at that point, I'd have 2 more years of payments, and it wouldn't be 200 grand, and it would be a much more manageable number.
I mean, he's making pretty good money on his interest. I don't see why he wouldn't be down
Yeah,
for that, especially if you're doing well and you guys have a good relationship, unless he's really
yeah,
hurting for cash in this at the end of these 5 years. I don't see why he would say, hey, yeah,
Yeah,
let's call it up
I
and pay
agree.
up
yep,
what you owe. So that's cool. I was thinking of a situation where you can do something like Tim and his island, right? Where he did like a share split. I don't know if you're familiar with that, where they get like he they it was 100 grand a share. I don't know the exact details of it, but
yeah.
the person gets to use it for a week for the 100 grand, and then they get a small, tiny little percentage. I think it's like 4% or something. Same concept.
Yeah. I actually haven't thought about that, but now that you say that, I remember him talking about that. I'll have to look into that.
Is that how you guys met?
Yeah, that's how we met. We're part of our mastermind together.
Yeah.
And so, actually, he's the one that told me about Pace. Jesse, I know you just went to go see him, but Ryan's friends with Pace. So then I was I was thinking about, because that's how we kind of did the Michigan hotel too with our investors. We did shares rather than do a syndication style deal. But that could be something that could work, man. So listen, I this is kind of cool. I'm really excited about it. Did you book up July already, by the way? Because that's when my birthday is, and I really do want to go up there.
You know what? No, July is actually probably better fishing. August, I had a bunch of people that specifically wanted silver salmon or coho, which are in August. So my August is more full than my July right now.
Oh, cool. There you go. Yeah, Rafa. We'll talk about it. I'll reach out this upcoming week, because I got to plan it, because I'm not a big fishing guy. My brother's huge on fishing. But I just want to go for the experience. Plus, I'm probably going to take some time, because I'm going to go visit some other guys out there in Alaska as well. Cool. So, and I want to check the whole thing out. But anyway, so we're getting to the top of the hour here. Any final questions, Jesse, you may have before we get into our final segment here?
Nope. No, I always get curious. Like we talked about the creative finance. That's been something I've been really trying to figure out a lot more of lately. So I'm always curious on how that works, or what that looks like, what the splits are, all those kinds of things. But yeah, man, thanks for sharing that. So I think I'm good, Rafa.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how you got into this deal. It's kind of exciting. I've always wanted to do something like that. So when I was like, hey, we should bring you on to talk about this, because a lot of people always wondering, like, being that we're in you're technically in the short-term rental space, you're just in a very niche part of it, right? Yeah. Because you're offering only a certain amount of time during the year. It is short-term because you're offering weekly stays, but it's a full inclusive package. So you're more of like a vacation rental package type of deal. So I thought it was very cool, very unique, and I really wanted to have you on here about it. But so
riches in the niches.
Riches in the niches, yeah. Being that this is the big break show, man, I gotta ask you, like, what was your big break, right? Anything in terms of life, relationships, business that got you from old Ryan to new Ryan, or got you to kind of change your mindset, or anything like that?
Yeah. I think, and maybe if I can touch on like two things that are pretty related, actually. But I think my biggest break is when going back to that moment, like I can still feel it, if that makes sense, in my mind, when I was writing those checks and like wishing I was at home and like working my ass off, right? And thinking like, how do I bridge this gap? How do I get from me to him? And that started my thought process. That was a big breakthrough for me, which also led to actually putting in my 2-week notice and quitting. I'd been there for almost 12 years, right? So to do that for me, I'm a very loyal person, and they taught me so much. I was sick to my stomach. I didn't know I was taking so much risk with my family, but that, like, those two things combined, I think were my biggest break, in that I finally kind of freed myself from that 9-to-5 mentality and that, oh, I need this, and started building my confidence on like growing my own business and doing my own thing. And then I guess to feed on top of that, I did have one of those deals I went in on as a limited partner with. I put in like 40 grand, and I came out with, like, by the time they sold it, I came out with like 300 grand. That was a huge break for me, because now I had a little money that I could go put down at the lodge, that I could go invest in some of my own deals. And, I've never had a deal like that. That was a unicorn, but like, thank God, honestly, it came at that time it did, because all those things, like, once I put myself out and put that energy out there, all three of those things combined to just really kind of like set me on my path. So
isn't that kind of crazy how things always work out like that, right? Like, things come at you when you need them the most.
Yeah. Like when I was at the bottom of the barrel, it's like, oh, hey, we're selling this property. I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah. So those were, that whole process was my big break.
That's cool, man.
Is that what funded you being able to put the money down on the lodge?
Yep, and started funding some of my other investments. So yeah.
Super cool. Where else do you invest besides Alaska?
I invest right now heavily in Utah and Arizona for multifamily deals, and I'm trying to expand to Texas and Southeast US, but I don't have any deals there yet.
Got it. Okay, cool. Yeah, you will.
Remember, Jesse, remember that deal that I said really quick? Remember that deal that I showed you out in Texas that we were looking at for those like college houses? Yeah, Ryan.
Oh yeah. Oh, that Ryan's. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think we ran some comps on that. Yeah, that's
that
cool.
College Station one, the 4+.
Yeah, that's the one, the College Station. That's right.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Right. So right now we're going to talk about a learn and apply segment here. What's something that somebody could take from this episode right now and literally learned it from here, and then apply that to their everyday life? What's something that you would suggest in this situation?
I guess to answer that question from this segment, I think a big part for me has been like leaning in and learning from other people. So I don't know if that's necessarily something that I've mentioned or could come from this segment. But if I were to narrow in on that, I would say it would be hone in on kind of what you love doing and what you're good at. Like the lodge, I'm telling you guys numbers, and now that it's functioning, it looks great. But it was that first year, I scraped by. You know what I mean? It was one of the hardest things I did. And I left my job. I was feeling insecure. So I think the moral of this story is like trust in yourself. And if you have a dream or passion, then start implementing little steps and goals to make that a reality, right? Because if you don't start taking those first baby steps, you're never going to get there. And did I ever think, like when I was a kid, that I'd have a lodge in Alaska? It was just a dream for me, and now I'm lucky that I get to go live it and I love it. Yeah. And that's why it worked, because I'm passionate about it, right? So find something you're passionate about that you love and that you can excel at, and then go for it. Yeah, because you only live once, right? So,
YOLO, Ryan.
I love that you said that too, Ryan, because YOLO. I love that you said that too, because I was just thinking about this the other night, actually. I think I was thinking about this last night. I was talking to my girlfriend about it. Sometimes I get really overwhelmed because I'm thinking of so many. Dude, my head's going 100 miles an hour all the time, right? So I'm like, this is happening. This
Preaching
is
to the choir, bro.
Yeah, dude. And I'm like, yeah, it's funny. And I was like, a lot of the times I get really overwhelmed because I feel like I'm not doing enough. But then I come to it and I go, I'm not doing enough because I don't put my mind to actually do something. And the best way to get there is to break that down into baby steps and just do one small little actionable thing. And I do this all the time. I just get ahead of myself, right? And it's like, if you just start doing small steps towards that, eventually it's not going to seem like a big, gigantic thing you got to do. It just seems like you're doing it little by little, right? Whether it's learning how to talk to people, learn creative finance, whatever the case may be. So I love that you say that, man. Hopefully people pick that up.
Yeah, no, I agree. You know what crazy thing too, Rafa? Like we were just talking about Pace Morby earlier. I went and watched Pace and Jamil in Fresno over the weekend. And you watch all these super successful, like multimillionaire people talk. And you know what, dude? It's not this like crazy recipe that's not out there. Like what you just said right now, Ryan, literally every single one of those guys went up there and that was their speech. It's just like, hey, find something that you love, put in energy into it, put in stuff to do it. It's like, it's not this fucking crazy like recipe. Like literally anybody could do it. You have to like, first off, believe in yourself, think that things are true. And it all starts with you. Like at the end of the day, it truly starts with you. And if you don't know how to do it, you just fucking figure it out. Like you did that with your place. You picked it up. You got it. You said, oh shit, you had an insurance issue and you fucking figured it out. And I think a lot of times, like we get scared of that. Yeah, you problem solve it. Yeah. And I think a lot of times people just don't, just like Rafa said a minute ago, you get 10 steps ahead before you're even actually like starting the project. You're just already in your mind, like, okay, what am I going to do when I get here? But dude, I haven't even started yet. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I mean, just sitting there, that was my takeaway from watching those guys is like, and it gave me kind of affirmation too with the people that I talked to that were in the right track and we're heading in the right direction. It's just that sometimes we need to have that like ancillary person to kind of reaffirm that. And I think that's what like masterminds and all these things are. You guys are a part of them. Like all these guys talk about the same things and maybe in a different way, but there's no recipe for it. You know what I mean? It's just like, you just fucking do it and then you figure it out. And it's baby steps, you know?
And you be consistent, right, Jesse? Like one thing I learned, I mean, not one, I learned a bunch from Pace, man. Very knowledgeable and go-giver guy. But one thing he told me that always stuck with me is he's like, hey, and he was relating to sales specifically. He's like, hey, if you match up the best salesperson in the world with the most consistent salesperson in the world, the most consistent person will outperform the best person any day of the week, right? And had I not been consistent on picking up the phone, calling brokers, calling owners, I would have never got that call from that broker that's like, hey, you've been bugging me twice a week for 2 years. If you're serious, then get up here, you know? And that's one thing I can relate, like consistency paid off. I didn't know what I was doing, to be honest, but because I was consistent, someone gave me that opportunity. So
yeah, you know,
I love that.
I've been talking about this recently too. Like it's hard to fail at something if you're consistent at it. Like literally it's impossible to fail if you're consistent with something. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Like you can be going to the gym 3 days a week and still eating crappy, but you're still going to have muscle tone and stuff. Like it's hard to fail at that. You know what I mean? If you're eating right and you do that consistently, if you're starting a business and you're learning more about business stuff, like honestly, truthfully, it's impossible to fail if you're consistent. Like I'm serious. Like if you think about anything, it's hard to fail at that end. But I'm glad you brought that up, man, because that was another thing they talked about was consistency and having grit and tenacity. Like when things get difficult, you don't like give up. You just keep doing it. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not a secret freaking recipe that only these rich or, and I think that's a mindset thing too. A lot of times we think about this as you're younger, you're just like, oh, they got more, they came from a rich family. They got more things than we do. I don't have the potential to do that. And we're self-limiting our own beliefs that we're incapable of getting these certain things, whether that's finances or a relationship or, you know, family or whatever the hell the thing is. It's all out there. It's just changing the thought process at the end of the day. Well, there it is, folks. Ryan, he's not living in Alaska. He's got his own lodge out there. He's living the dream. He was a property manager at one point in his life. It sounds like he's going to be buying another property management company, Ryan, now that I got this going in your head now. It sounds like you're talking about it already. So next time we have you on, dude, you're going to be talking about how you own this multi-million-dollar property management company that you're selling to Blackstone. So yeah, dude, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, thank you guys for the opportunity, Jesse, Rafa. Appreciate it, both of you.
Yeah, where do we find you at, man? What's your Instagram handles and stuff?
Yeah, Instagram is just my name, Ryan Kocherhans, Kocherhans. I actually just started. This doesn't even relate to my lives, but I just started my YouTube channel too. Same thing, just at Ryan Kocherhans, where I'm just giving tip on multifamily underwriting and really operating. And then, yeah, you can always reach out to me on Facebook as well. Just again, my name. So.
And drop the site for your lodge, man, in case anybody's interested in going. As a matter of fact, you know what? I think maybe it'd be cool if we can host like a cool group out there, like a good mastermind group between us, right? Like that'd be badass to do.
I have thought about that a lot, man, and maybe I've just had some hesitation on like who would come, but I as I've like thrown the idea around, there's a lot of people that would actually come, and I think it could be a very like cool kind of a high level group that gathers. So
I would love to go out there even just to teach short-term rentals, like at a really high level, like go into the nitty gritty, not like how to get started, but like how to operate, how to like scale, automate, systemize, like all that fun stuff. You know, that'd be awesome to do as well.
Well, and that's what we do besides fish, right? We mastermind and then we fish and we can go bear view and we can go sightsee. So yeah.
And build good relationships. Yeah. So what's the site? Drop it. Give it to us.
Yeah. It's just www.alaskan. So it's Alaska with an N, remoteadventures.com. And that applies the same for Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and just the website. So AlaskanRemoteAdventures.com.
Yeah, guys, give this man a follow. You guys will see some of these bear viewings. They're crazy. They're like 5 feet away from you. I'd be scared to get mauled by these things. But yeah, man, I'm excited. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you, Ryan. And we'll put everything in the show notes for everybody to be able to just click on the link if needed. So thanks.
Oh, yeah, appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, bro.